Welcome back to ESBR Boxing. Delighted to be joined by Elliot and Owen. This is a reaction video to the fight that happened earlier tonight between Joseph Parker and Jack Massey, in which Joseph Parker won the unanimous decision on all three scorecards with scores of 96, 93, 97, 92, and 97, 93. Gents, just going to be a quick one here. What did you think of the fight? I think some people expected Parker to win by stoppage against Massey, who's coming up from cruiserweight. And I feel like there's a bit of negativity around what is left in Joseph Parker's career. Owen, I'll start things off with you. What did you think of the fight?
It's a weird fight, really. Obviously, Massey's first fight up at heavyweight, put on quite a bit as well. Didn't really go for broke against what's the biggest name he's fought in terms of his record. It was just a bit. It's a really weird one. I think Parker didn't look great. I think he only did what he needed to do. I do tend to agree with what Andy Lee said after, when Massey was quite negative in the fight. He didn't really bring much forwards. It did seem to me like he's been offered a big payday that's come out of the blue, in a sense. I would be really interested to see how Massey become the opponent, what their list of opponents as potential opponents was, and how they come to that conclusion. So, really underwhelming fight. For Joseph Parker to be that low down on an undercard as well, it is a real shame. He's gave us some very good nights. I mean, the Joe Joyce fight was ridiculous, but I do think when you look at Parker, I do have to question how much has Joe Joyce taken out of him, because although he's a warrior, that was a real tough night for Parker. Joyce landed some brutal shots, and I think that might have shown tonight in why Parker was so reserved and didn't necessarily come forward. I think if he wanted to stop Massey, he could have, but he knew nothing was coming back that was going to really hurt him. So just a sparring session, really, in my opinion.
Yeah, but didn't really have the fireworks that I think people wanted it to.
Mm-hmm.
I think one thing about Parker was that his fight with Joyce, I think, was late September, so it was a bit, considering how that fight went and how difficult it was. It was a surprise to some people he was back in the ring so quickly. Elliot, what were your thoughts on the fight?
I think, well, I think Owen there is he's prepared. He's at least sanded or prepared the wood for the coffin, and I'm going to put some nails in it. Frankly, I think tonight, yeah, it's been a bold night, some bold predictions. So what I'm going to come out here and say actually is that I think Joseph Parker's finished, frankly, as a heavyweight contender. I looked at that fight tonight, and spectacle wise, it was like a spar in many ways, in many rounds. I mean, you're sitting there going, all right, Jack Massey, he turned up towards the last few rounds, didn't throw a lot really, but equally Parker didn't put much on him either. And then when he did hit him, he didn't move him. And this is coming from someone who's essentially a cruiserweight rather than a heavyweight fighter. So, but essentially, just fighting someone who hadn't really cut weight. And I think overall, it just seemed an unusual. I agree with Owen; it was bizarre, but it just seemed an unusual show that wasn't, frankly, great for Parker. I think there's no criticism for Massey. Obviously, you're coming up in weight, fighting a big name, big profile. But I honestly think Parker. I mean, Parker's sitting where sort of eighth in the ring rankings at heavyweight, frankly, and I think that's massively overinflated. I think he's finished as a heavyweight contender. Yes, there's heavyweight fights out there for him. He can almost take on a sort of gatekeeper role, but I don't think he's got the size to compete with some of those guys that are coming through either, and he definitely doesn't have the power anymore. It'd be a question of resistance. I don't necessarily think he's got the resistance either. So yeah, I think I would expect, unfortunately, Parker to sort of plummet down those rankings. I think and I don't think I like Joseph Parker, but I just think you have to look at it objectively and just go, there's not a lot left here for someone who's sort of in his early 30s.
Yeah, Owen, would you agree with Elliot? Do you think Parker's finished as a heavyweight contender?
I think when you look at, like you say, the names of who are in contention, genuinely, who does he beat? I mean, even if you looked at people like Otto Berlin, I think Otto Berlin would not necessarily steamroll him, but if the Otto Berlin that turned up against Tyson Fury turned up against Joseph Parker, I think Parker's in serious trouble. And at the minute, bar Dylan White, it's almost a struggle for Berlin to get in with the top contenders. So when you look at people at that level, I mean, even your likes of Hergovich, Obviously, Zhang's just got the big fight against Joe Joyce again, but even at your gatekeeper level, like if he fought, put him in again with someone like Chisora, do people want to see it? Probably not. Is it a fight that would happen? Probably yes. There's paydays for him, but there's no titles for him. And personally, although I know most boxers, they all say they can't give it up, they struggle, but realistically, retirement is probably the best option, even though he's won. Because, in my opinion, I don't see the point in getting hurt if you're not going to win nothing. And if you stick him in with some of these young guns who are coming through, I mean, you look at Jared Anderson, the fighters that are being produced now, they're just specimens. I think they'll just run through people like Parker that are too small. He's given us some great nights. He's a world champion and he's had a very good career. I don't want to sound too harsh on him because it almost sounds like he hasn't necessarily done much in boxing. I think he's had a great career, but I do have to agree. I just really don't see what's left for him outside of top 20, even pushing top 25 maybe. It's a tough one. He's got a good trainer in Andy Lee, but I don't see what he can do.
Yeah, I think Parker, he's just turned 31, so he's still young for a heavyweight. But two fights with Derek Chisora, one fight with Dillian White, 12 rounds with Joshua, 11 rounds with Joe Joyce. He's had a lot of tough fights in his career. And I watched most of the show tonight, and after the Parker fight, Fraser Clark was doing punditry after his fight, which was quite funny. And they were talking about him being a potential future opponent. And I was thinking, I'm not a massive Fraser Clark fan. I don't think he's doing a lot at the moment, but in my opinion, in 6 months' time, I do think Fraser Clark could beat Joseph Parker. Because I think Joseph Parker's going like that and Fraser Clark's going like that, with actually Fraser Clark, I believe, is older than Joseph Parker, believe it or not. Elliot, what did you make of Owen's claims that Joseph Parker should possibly retire now? Would you think that could be the right idea for him?
Yeah, you know what? Owen rationalised it on the basis that I wouldn't want to take punishment and get hurt. And to be honest with you, that's fair enough. I can't disagree with that. I think some of the guys, like you mentioned, that are coming through in the heavyweight division now, they are they sound a bit unusual. They're big boys, frankly, that are coming through there. And I just think, like you say, you mentioned the names that Parker's fought, the nights that he's had. His career's not going to hit that high again. I don't think anyone would expect it to, frankly. I mean, could he? Again, it's like one of those things where, almost like Owen mentioned, they draw the comparison with Chisora. It's like, how much do you kind of want it? And to be honest with you, though, I don't see in Joseph Parker that he wants it like Chisora. I don't see he's like an animal like that just loves fighting. I feel like, in a way, like he's got that Andy Lee, that kind of Tyson Fury promotion. I feel he feels like, because he's still young, he's almost being encouraged and compelled to carry on fighting. But I don't see him as a guy that loves it in the same way, that kind of lives it and breathes it. And when you look through some of those guys, even at the rank sort of below him, like you said, they mentioned those monsters like Jalal Bergovic, Bacoli, someone like Bacoli will kill him. And I just feel like it's just, if those are the fights you're going to be put in with, then in a way, I don't necessarily see there being much point in that. The Fraser Clark one is something that I kind of suggested off air as it was happening, because initially I thought this is ridiculous. Like, you look at the fights that Parker's been in with, but then you look at it also and go, I would, like you, actually thinking 6 months down the line, Clark could beat him. And I'd probably back in 10-round fight. I think if it was a 10-rounder, Clark versus Parker, I could definitely see Clark getting a nod there. So, and that, to be honest with you, I think rather than show how good we think Clark is, shows us how far we think Parker has fallen, frankly. And so I mean, if on health grounds, if he was to retire, I'd say fair enough, frankly. Thank you for what you've done. Those nights you mentioned, I'd back Dillian White to beat him now. I'd back some of those guys that he's fought and had close fights with to actually just obliterate him now, frankly. And I wouldn't want to see it happen. So, like I said, I do think he's a nice guy. I do think he's a good guy. He's been a good character for boxing. But yeah, I think I'm not. It's not as an outrageous shout as some people would suggest it might be.
Yeah. Owen's come up with worse shouts in the past, that's for sure. Anyway, we won't go into that now. Gents, bit of a doom and gloom video, but yeah, thank you for joining me. Joseph Parker has beaten Jack Massey on points, and we will see what he does next. Speak to you soon.